Let us start, Chewie, as Maria from The Sound of Music said, at the very beginning. It's a very good place to go. And let's bring on our special guest. She is a journalist at Business Desk. We want to welcome to the show Cecile Meier. Cecile, thank you for joining us and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're not going to give us any bad news, eh? Chewie wants a good news night. So there's not going to be anything negative with us talking to you, eh?
No, good news only.
Good news only. And the good news is Compass has found a saving in school lunches. Hang on. Let me just bring up a story from Business Desk today. The headline on Business Desk is From Prime to Offal. Compass puts cheap cuts on school lunch menu. Rather than me fumbling over it and trying to explain the 50% offal and 50% beef trim, why don't you, it just sounds wrong. Why don't you explain to us this information that you've had an exclusive to, however you got that information, whether it was through a leak or through an anonymous source. Tell us what you've found out that Compass is doing with school lunches.
Okay, so I did get an anonymous email last week telling me about a new mince that Compass had started ordering for the school lunches. And it said that the mince is a mix. It's rather than having prime beef, it's a blend of beef heart and beef trim, as you said. And initially I didn't really understand what the problem was. But then I, later I understood that basically when you sell a product that has offal in it, you have to disclose it because people want to know what they're getting, what they're eating. And for catering, like school lunches, they also have to disclose it, say on their website or any documentation that they have. They have to say, the ingredients that they use if it contains offal. So that's from the food code, Australia and New Zealand food code. Anyway, so I then tried to understand what happened, when they started using it, how much of it they started using. And turns out it looks like they've swapped from using prime beef to this new blend. And then, of course, when I contacted them and asked them, what's going on, at first there was no response. The ministry said there has been no change. And then I contacted MPI as well, who was the regulator here, and MPI confirmed that this needed to be disclosed, and they said we will contact Compass about this information, and we'll see what's going on. So the next day, they then confirmed that there had been a change of mince, and that they were going to disclose it before serving the new, because they started using that mince before school holidays and cooking with it, and they're going to serve the meals this term. So they say they were always going to disclose it, but they only disclosed it after I contacted them, and MPI also got in touch with them. Pretty much the next day, the website was changed.
What a coincidence that they happened to disclose after you contacted them. So let me just get the timetabling right. Because obviously disclosure would imply before one ingests it. And you're saying they were definitely using it last term. So they were using it with no disclosure.
No, they used it to. So there's a bit of a lag between cooking the meals and serving them. I think it's about a month because they freeze the meals and the meals get transported. So, I don't think the meals containing the new mince had been eaten yet, but my understanding, and that was certainly the source that contacted me, what they said was that they believed there was going to be no disclosure and they were concerned about that. So yes, they disclosed it in time, but hard to tell whether they would have done it, without this questioning. And they also, in the way they answer the questions, they kind of said, oh, it's just a new kind of like a top-up supply we're using because there's a shortfall with our existing supplier. So they kind of try to downplay it. But the quantity, I had access to information about the quantity of the order, and it was, it was 10 tons per week, which really covers the bulk of their needs. So, they kind of try to, again, downplay it or being a bit evasive about it.
Without kind of skipping past this, just purely the idea of cooking a meal and then serving it to a child a month later, even that in and of itself seems pretty horrific to me. I think your story said the difference between beef trim and 50% beef heart and premium mince was about a 25% savings. If that's the case, this goes to show when you give a job like this to an organization that needs to make a profit on their $2 a meal, what kind of margins they can cut. I can guarantee that if it was one of the mums, like maybe last year, who was working in the kitchen at the primary school going, now, shall I spend $200 on offal and beef trim, or shall I spend $225 on prime mince? You know what they would do, because it's not a big savings in a one-off. But when you go to, as you say, 10 tons, you can see why in a commercial setting, it's maybe not the best nutritional decision to give these kind of jobs and contracts to a corporate company. I guess this is an opinion-based comment, Cecile. You don't have to address that, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like they're saving a lot of money for putting offal in our kids' food.
Well, I think it's a bit tricky because offal itself is not nutritionally inferior necessarily to beef. It's just a taste. I think that, there's nutritionally it's quite nutrient rich, iron, B12, vitamins, and etc. It does contain more cholesterol, so that's not great. But it's more a transparency issue because, some people won't feel great about eating offal. And also there's a taste and texture, it's a bit like venison or sudden, it's very, there's no fat on it. So it's very,
it's gamey.
Yeah. And so I think the taste might be difficult for some kids, because it's already, there's been issues about some meals being described as inedible, and I don't know what this is gonna, if this is gonna help or not. So I wouldn't say necessarily nutrition-wise, it's a problem, but there are other issues at play. Plus, the big issue really is the transparency here.
Yeah, we have. I occasionally every other year we'd buy half a cow, half a bullock with friends up the hill, and when you got them that way, they came with the offal, and we were like, he was like, do you want any of the heart? And we were like, no, you can have it, bro, because it did have a very different taste to it. And like I'm aware that there are some incredible nutritional benefits from offal, but like you say, if the rules say that you got to disclose it, then you got to disclose it. And I guess now, because they have been potentially caught out before they served any, there can't be any penalties. Like, one of the questions I was going to ask is this like a liable action? Is this a criminal action? But they've had the space because of your investigation to actually clean up the mess before it happens, yeah?
Yeah, again, I mean, this is speculative. If you believe what they say, they were always going to disclose. So maybe it just so happened that, but yes, if they hadn't disclosed, if say, if I had maybe waited a couple of weeks or a month and then done the same story and there had been no disclosure, there are potential penalties, quite big fines. I think, I can't recall the amount, but it's, it's substantial. However, I think usually what MPI, so New Zealand Food Safety, which is the regulator here, what they told me is that they usually take a collaborative approach. They wouldn't like go out and give a fine necessarily. They might approach the business and say, hey, you haven't disclosed this, you need to disclose it, and then the business might do the disclosure. So, I don't know exactly what would have happened, but I think in this case, it appears that New Zealand Food Safety got in touch with the company after I contacted them, and maybe they told them what they need to do. I'm not sure, but I know they did get in touch and they did look into it. So,
yeah. Hey, Chewie, thoughts, sir?
Yeah, look, there's been a lot humming past in the chat about, there are ways to eat offal. There's, as you said, it can be nutritionally dense. It's tougher, gamier flavor. Surely that's not the end of the world. And look, it's probably not. But as you said, it's the transparency thing. The first thing that jumped to mind, though, is one of the criticisms of some of the suppliers for the school lunch program. Overseas, they were caught substituting horse meat for beef. And again, that was a question of profit margins, and it was concealed from the public. And this just illustrates part of the story that we were initially concerned about, is that this was not for the benefit of the children. Like, that wasn't the prime concern. The prime concern was, how cheap can we make this meal? David Seymour has set a monetary value that we need to hit, not a nutritional value, not a percentage of kids fed on time, nutritional points, or anything like that. It was, we're going to get someone in that will do some sort of food very, very cheaply. And this is the sort of decision that comes out of this. The next step, if they want to increase their profit margins, is exactly how much wood pulp can we put in the mince to really beef out, pardon the pun, our profit margins. Like, this is what happens. Like, they're hoping the story goes away, and to be fair, nothing's been in the news cycle about it. We were sort of wondering, and then pop, up it comes. It was always coming.
This is something we need to double check on, though, Chewie, because we're a couple of rodeo clowns from Dunedin, but we're speaking to a professional journalist, and she may not have an opinion on some of these things that we throw out there willy nilly. Hey, Cecile.
I could say anything at any moment.
Yeah. What about families, parents? Have you heard from any parents of school kids that have been like, "This, what's this all about"?
No, I haven't. Look, at Business Desk, we tend to take the business angle, really stick to the fact we've done a lot on the procurement of the contract, and specific issues that are, again, more of a business angle. It'd be great. I hope other media pick up on this, and I'd love to hear, what principals, what parents, or even nutritionists, think of this. It'd be great to kind of hear more on this. But yeah, I haven't. And also, that's something I wanted to bring up, that former suppliers, other suppliers that used to do the school lunch program, from what I understand, they wouldn't have used a cheap cut like that. They would have used prime beef mince. So that's not something that would have been usual before in the previous version of the program or with other suppliers. So there's definitely a difference, and part of it is the amount of money that they are given, the $3. It's not a lot, and I think maybe it's possible to have sympathy for, the business trying to make it work. I don't know.
You've just used an interesting phrase, at the business desk, you take the business angle. So just to wrap up, almost to go over the whole conversation we've just had, what is the business angle for Compass wanting to have a percentage of their food or meat be offal to these children? What is their business angle, do you think?
Well, clearly it's saving 25% on the price of beef mince. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Then they probably thought, well, no one will notice, and we can do that. And how to tell it? You'd have to taste it, compare the previous mince and the new mince in a meal, how it comes out, and can you tell the difference? Maybe you can. I mean, again, I think 50% beef heart, it's quite a big a big amount, a big percentage. So I'd say the taste is likely to have changed. Nutritional wise, though, which is what they have to provide contractually, I think the nutrition remains the same. So, yeah, but clearly they're saying it's a supply issue, and there's also, one could interpret it as a cost-saving measure as well, I suppose.
Looking at your story, you also report in your story that I love the name. What's the name of the group? The Rainbows and Sunshine Lunch Collective or some crap like that. The School Lunch Collective. The School Lunch Collective, Chewie. They're a lovely group of mothers who just work together as a collective. They're the School Lunch Collective. The orders to them have already dropped by 15%. Which means the contracts that they've got are becoming easier, I guess, and maybe there's a bit more, pardon the pun, fat in those contracts, that they're not delivering as many lunches as they once were. I mean, the conspiracy theory in me says maybe they'd be perfectly happy to drop another 15%. If kids hate the taste of this, they might have even a bigger margin.
I think so. Well, it's possible. There's several aspects to this. So first of all, they only get paid for the lunches they deliver. So it's not like they're getting paid a set amount, and then if there's fewer lunches, they get more money. So I think on the one hand, they would want to retain as many orders as possible. But on the other hand, we know that they've had massive production issues, and they've really struggled to cook all the meals required. That's why they had to bring in pies last term. First term, if you remember that, they had to bring in the microwavable meals that were a disaster. So I think maybe there's a bit of both. Obviously, earning money means doing as many meals as possible, but production wise, it's been a challenge as far as we know, and maybe it's also making it easier in that way.
All right. Hey, Cecile, thanks so much for joining us. Now, obviously, Business Desk is behind a paywall, yeah? But if people want to find out more about it, what's the best thing for them to do? Like to find out more about Business Desk? What do people need to do?
Go on Business Desk and have a look. Subscribe, maybe even just for a month. And if you can see there's a lot of really good analysis, reporting that's not being done elsewhere. I really recommend it, especially for people who want to, dig a bit deeper into issues and political analysis. I'd also recommend following me on LinkedIn, because I usually post a little snippet of my articles. And, even though it's behind a paywall, for those who can't afford the subscription, it's a way that, I like to give at least the gist of it so that they can have a look.
Cool. Hey, Cecile, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you giving us some time. Journalist from Business Desk, that is Cecile Meier. All the best, eh?
Bye.
Thanks for your time.